The black SUV idled at the curb, engine purring like a sleeping beast. Christopher Kearns, the city's most notorious syndicate leader, adjusted his suit jacket, his neck tattoos flexing as he reached for the door handle. It was 5 p.m. on a Tuesday, pickup time. Everything was perfect, everything was routine, until a blur of yellow fabric burst through the security perimeter. It was Angela Jones, a tiny girl with eyes sharp as glass, pointing a trembling finger directly at the tinted window of Kearns' vehicle. Security moved to intercept her, but her voice cut through the air like a siren. "Stop! That's not your driver!" Kearns froze, his hand inches from the handle. He looked at the girl, then at the front seat. He leaned in, expecting to see his loyal driver, Marcus. But when the driver turned around, the face that smiled back wasn't Marcus, and by then, the door locks had already clicked shut. What happened inside that car in the next 30 seconds didn't just break the laws of physics, it broke the entire criminal underworld apart. Stay with me because how this little girl knew the truth is the twist no one saw coming. But before we dive in, I need to tell you something. This video took hours to research, write, and produce. Hours of late nights, script rewrites, and editing to bring you this story. If you appreciate the dedication and effort that goes into creating content like this, please hit that subscribe button. It's free, it takes 1 second, and it means the world to creators like me who pour their hearts into every upload. Thank you. Now, let's get into it. Christopher Kearns didn't rule his empire from a throne of gold and marble. His kingdom was glass, steel, and fear, meticulously organized, perfectly controlled. At 42, he was the consigliere of commerce, a man whose power wasn't announced by flashy jewelry, but by the impeccable tailoring of his charcoal suits and the dark, complex tattoos that wound around his neck like a silent warning. Every day at 5 p.m. sharp, Kearns left the Obsidian Tower, his downtown fortress disguised as a luxury apartment complex. The routine was sacred. Deviation meant death. And his driver, Marcus, a mountain of a man with hands like cinder blocks and loyalty forged in shared scars, was the sole constant in this daily ritual. Marcus wasn't just a driver, he was a sentry, a protector, a friend. Kearns trusted Marcus more than he trusted the steel plating of his armored SUV. On this particular Tuesday, Kearns exited the private elevator at 4:59 p.m., his Italian leather shoes clicking against the polished concrete of the basement garage. His security team flanked him, 3 men in dark suits, earpieces glowing faintly in the dim light. Everything was as it should be. The SUV waited at the designated spot, engine running. Through the tinted windows, Kearns could see the familiar silhouette of his driver in the front seat. The routine was unbroken. He checked his phone, scrolling through encrypted messages from his lieutenants. A shipment had arrived at the docks. A deal was closing in the financial district. His empire was functioning like a Swiss watch. Kearns reached for the door handle, his mind already on the evening's agenda. A meeting with city developers, a dinner with a state senator, the delicate balance of legitimate business and underground power. He trusted his security implicitly. He trusted the routine. He trusted Marcus. And that trust, in the next 60 seconds, would nearly cost him his life. Angela Jones was 8 years old, small for her age, and perpetually dressed in colors that defied the gray, metallic world she inhabited. Today, it was a canary yellow windbreaker that made her look like a tiny sun in the dim basement garage. She spent her afternoons in the service corridor while her mother, Elena, cleaned offices in the Obsidian Tower. To most people, Angela was invisible, just another janitor's kid killing time. But Angela saw everything. She didn't see the men in suits as terrifying. She saw them as patterns. She knew when the delivery guy arrived, when the guards changed shifts, and most importantly, the exact moment Mr. Kearns left for the day. She also knew Marcus. Marcus, despite his intimidating size and his face weathered by years of violence, had a soft spot for the girl in yellow. Every day at 5 p.m., without fail, he would catch her eye through the windshield, give her a genuine smile, a quick wink, and a tiny wave with his left hand before pulling out of the garage. It was their routine, their silent acknowledgement. On this Tuesday, Angela was sitting on a concrete step near the garage ramp, swinging her legs and watching for Marcus. She saw the familiar black SUV idling in position. She smiled, ready for her favorite part of the day. But something was wrong. The driver's window was slightly lowered, just enough for her to see the driver's profile. The man behind the wheel was gripping the steering wheel with both hands, a tight, nervous grip. He was shifting his weight every few seconds, fidgeting. Marcus never fidgeted. Marcus was a rock. Then she saw his hand. The driver's right hand was resting on the center console. There was no silver watch, the bulky, old-fashioned timepiece that Marcus wore on his right wrist every single day, a gift from his grandfather. Instead, there was a cheap black rubber band on his left wrist. Angela's heart began to pound. She stood up, her yellow windbreaker rustling. Mr. Kearns was walking toward the SUV now, surrounded by his guards, phone in hand. That is not Marcus. She dropped her backpack and ran. "Stop!" she screamed, her small voice echoing off the concrete walls. "That's not your driver." The security team turned, confused. One guard reached out to grab her, but she ducked under his arm, her yellow jacket a bright streak in the gray space. Kearns paused, his hand inches from the door handle. He looked down at the tiny girl, pointing at his vehicle with absolute terror in her eyes. "What are you talking about?" he asked, his voice sharp with irritation. "That's not Mr. Marcus," Angela gasped, breathless. "He's got the wrong hand on the wheel. And where is his silver watch? He doesn't have the silver watch." Kearns looked at the driver. The man in the front seat turned slowly, and their eyes met through the glass. The smile on the driver's face was all wrong. Time fractured into fragments. The imposter driver, Victor, though Kearns didn't know his name yet, made his decision in less than a second. His finger jammed the electronic lock button, and every door on the SUV clicked shut with a sound like a coffin closing. The passenger window exploded inward. Victor's hand came through the shattered glass, holding a compact pistol with a silencer, aimed directly at Kearns' chest. But Kearns was already moving, his instincts honed by decades of survival. He threw himself backward, pulling Angela down with him. The first shot went wide, punching through the concrete column behind them. The second hit one of Kearns' guards in the shoulder, spinning him like a top. Then Victor triggered the chemical projectile, a localized gas weapon designed to incapacitate everyone in the immediate area. The canister hissed as it deployed, and a pale yellow mist began to fill the garage. Kearns felt the acidic sting in his lungs, the world tilting sideways. His guards were dropping, clutching their throats, unable to breathe or fight. The knockout agent was fast-acting and brutal, but the projectile had missed Kearns' center mass. He'd moved just enough that it had grazed his arm instead of hitting his chest. The burn was excruciating, but he was conscious. Barely. Victor gunned the engine. The SUV lurched forward, tires screaming against the polished concrete. It wasn't heading for the exit. It was heading for them. Kearns grabbed Angela, his vision swimming, and threw himself behind a concrete support column. The SUV roared past, so close he could feel the heat from the exhaust, and crashed through the security barrier at the garage entrance, metal shrieking as it tore apart. Then the SUV was gone, accelerating up the ramp and into the street. The garage fell silent except for the groaning of wounded guards and the chemical hiss of the dispersing gas. Kearns could feel his consciousness slipping, the toxin fighting his adrenaline. His arm was on fire where the projectile had grazed him. Angela was pressed against him, trembling but unharmed. Her yellow windbreaker was smudged with concrete dust. "Stay low," Kearns managed to rasp, his voice thick. "Don't move." His mind was racing despite the poison in his system. This wasn't a random hit. This was surgical. They'd replaced Marcus. They knew the schedule. They knew the security protocols. Someone on the inside had sold him out. And now he was exposed, wounded, and alone, with only a terrified 8-year-old girl as his witness. Kearns sat on the edge of the cot, his mind racing through the possibilities. Silas had been with him for 8 years. They'd built the empire together. Kearns had trusted him with everything, the financials, the logistics, the personnel, and Silas had sold him out. Angela was sitting cross-legged on the floor now, her yellow windbreaker unzipped. She looked small and fragile in the harsh fluorescent light of the safe room, but her eyes were sharp, observant. How did you know? Kearns asked quietly. About the driver. How did you know it wasn't Marcus? Angela looked down at her hands. Mr. Marcus is nice to me. Every day when he leaves, he waves at me with his left hand. Always his left hand. But the man in the car today was holding the wheel with his left hand. Mr. Marcus is right-handed. He holds the wheel with his right hand and waves with his left. She paused, then continued. And Mr. Marcus wears his grandfather's silver watch on his right wrist. He showed it to me once. It's really old and heavy. But the man in the car today had a black rubber band on his left wrist instead. And what? Mr. Marcus always keeps a lollipop wrapper in the emergency brake handle, for me. He gives me one every Friday, but I couldn't see the wrapper in that car. Kearns felt something tighten in his chest. The smallest details. The things only someone who paid attention would notice. This little girl had saved his life because she'd actually seen Marcus. Not as a driver, not as an employee, but as a person. Where do you live, Angela? Kearns asked. Building C, she replied. Same building as Mr. Marcus. Kearns's heart sank. Did you see Marcus this morning? Angela shook her head. No, he didn't come home last night. My mom was worried because he always brings us bread from the bakery on Tuesdays. But he didn't come. So they'd taken Marcus at least 24 hours ago. Long enough to study him, to prepare the replacement, to set the trap. Kearns pulled out a burner phone from a lockbox in the wall. He couldn't use his regular phone. They'd be tracking it. He dialed a number he'd memorized years ago and never thought he'd need. Morrison, a gruff voice, answered. It's Kearns. I need clean backup. No uniforms, no radio chatter. The Rhodes warehouse on the docks. 20 minutes. What's the situation? A coup. Imposters in my security team. My driver's missing. If you're not there in 20 minutes, the whole city goes up in flames. There was a pause. I'll be there. Kearns hung up. Detective Morrison was old-school state police, one of the few cops in the city who Kearns had a mutual understanding with. Morrison looked the other way on certain operations, and Kearns made sure certain crimes never happened in Morrison's jurisdiction. It was a devil's bargain, but it had held for years. What are we going to do? Angela asked. Kearns looked at her, this tiny girl in a yellow jacket, who'd just unraveled a conspiracy that should have killed him. We're going to find Marcus, and we're going to end this. Kearns forced himself to his feet, his legs unsteady. The chemical agent was still in his system, making his thoughts sluggish and his vision blur at the edges. He couldn't stay here. The garage was compromised, and whoever had orchestrated this attack would have backup plans. He grabbed Angela's hand. Can you run? She nodded, her eyes wide but focused. They moved through the service corridor, away from the main garage. Kearns's arm throbbed where the chemical had burned through his jacket, leaving an angry red welt on his skin. Behind them, he could hear his guards beginning to stir, their voices confused and panicked. But he couldn't trust them, not yet. If they'd replaced Marcus, they could have replaced anyone. Kearns pulled Angela through a maintenance door that most people didn't know existed. It led to a narrow stairwell that descended deeper into the building's substructure, a hidden bolt hole he'd built years ago for exactly this kind of emergency. Where are we going? Angela whispered. Somewhere safe, Kearns replied, though he wasn't sure anywhere was safe anymore. They reached a steel door at the bottom of the stairs. Kearns punched in a code, and the door hissed open, revealing a small, austere room lined with concrete. There was a cot, a medical kit, a wall of monitors showing security feeds, and a weapons locker. Kearns locked the door behind them and immediately went to the medical kit. His hands shook as he stripped off his jacket and examined the burn on his arm. The skin was blistered and raw, but it wasn't life-threatening. He cleaned it, applied burn gel, and wrapped it tightly. Angela watched him from the corner, hugging herself. Is Mr. Marcus okay? The question hit Kearns like a punch. He hadn't thought about Marcus, the real Marcus. If they'd replaced him, that meant they'd taken him, kidnapped him, maybe killed him. I don't know, Kearns admitted, but we're going to find out. He turned to the wall of monitors and pulled up the security feeds from the garage. His guards were back on their feet now, milling around in confusion. He scanned their faces, looking for anything out of place. Then Angela spoke up. That one, the tall man near the broken glass. Kearns looked at the screen. It was Tony, one of his veteran guards. What about him? He's walking wrong, Angela said, stepping closer to the monitor. Mr. Tony always stands with his weight on his right leg because his left leg twitches. See? That man is standing straight. And his left shoe is too shiny. Mr. Tony's shoes are always scuffed. Kearns stared at the screen, his blood running cold. She was right. The man on the monitor looked like Tony, but the posture was different. The details were wrong. Anyone else? He asked, his voice tight. Angela pointed to another guard. Mr. Frank. He's wearing a different earring today. And Mr. David. He uses too much hair gel. His hair is usually messy. Kearns felt the full weight of the betrayal settle on his shoulders. This wasn't just a hit. This was an infiltration. They'd systematically replaced his security team with imposters, waiting for the right moment to strike. And there was only one person who knew the schedules well enough to pull this off. Silas, his second in command. Kearns pulled up the GPS tracker he'd secretly installed in the real SUV, a precaution Marcus didn't even know about. The signal showed the vehicle stationary at the Old Roads warehouse on the waterfront. It was enemy territory, the base of operations for Damon, the Ghost Rhodes, a rival syndicate leader Kearns had been systematically crushing for the past 2 years. The pieces were falling into place. This wasn't just Silas's betrayal, it was a joint operation. Rhodes provided the manpower and the staging ground. Silas provided the intelligence and the access. Together, they'd orchestrated the perfect inside job. They have Mr. Marcus there? Angela asked, looking at the screen. Probably, Kearns replied. He was loading weapons from the locker, a compact pistol, spare magazines, a knife. They'd need him alive to get all the details right. Security codes, routines, personal habits. Are you going to save him? Kearns looked at her. The honest answer was that he was going to kill everyone responsible for this betrayal and restore order to his empire. But he couldn't say that to an 8-year-old. Yes, he said simply, I'm going to save him. I want to help. Absolutely not. You're staying here where it's safe. Angela crossed her arms. I can spot the fake guards. You said they replaced some of your men. What if there are more at the warehouse? What if you can't tell who's real and who's fake? She had a point, and Kearns hated that she had a point. His security team was compromised, and he didn't know how deep the infiltration went. Angela had already proven she could see details that trained soldiers missed. But taking a child into a combat situation was insane. If I let you help, Kearns said carefully, you stay in the van. You don't leave the van. You watch the video feed and tell me who's wrong. That's it. Understood? Angela nodded solemnly. Kearns went to a utility closet and pulled out maintenance worker coveralls and a cap. He changed quickly, hiding his weapons underneath. Then he found a visitor's badge and clipped it to his collar. From a distance, he'd look like a city inspector or a utility worker, not the most powerful crime boss in the city. They took the service elevator to the basement parking garage, avoiding the main levels entirely. Kearns commandeered a white utility van from the motor pool, the kind that blended into urban traffic like wallpaper. As they drove toward the docks, Kearns used the burner phone to spread disinformation through his network. He sent texts to various lieutenants claiming he'd been killed in the attack, that Silas was now in charge, and that there would be a gathering at the Obsidian Tower tonight to discuss succession. If Silas thought Kearns was dead, he'd get careless, he'd celebrate. And when he did, Kearns would be waiting. The Rhodes warehouse loomed against the gray sky like a monument to decay. It was a massive structure of corrugated steel and broken windows, surrounded by chain-link fencing and rusted shipping containers. The waterfront was quiet at this hour, just the distant sound of waves and seagulls. Kearns parked the utility van 2 blocks away, in the shadow of an abandoned cannery. He set up a laptop connected to a small surveillance drone he'd stored in the van's equipment locker. The drone was no bigger than his hand, nearly silent, and equipped with a high-definition camera. He launched it from the van's back door and guided it toward the warehouse using a handheld controller. Angela sat beside him, watching the video feed on the laptop screen. The drone circled the warehouse perimeter, its camera capturing every detail. Kearns counted 6 external guards, 2 at the front entrance, 2 at the side loading bay, and 2 patrolling the perimeter. See anyone you recognize? Kearns asked. Angela leaned closer to the screen. That one, she pointed to a guard near the loading bay. He looks like Mr. Raymond from the tower, but his shoes are wrong. Mr. Raymond wears boots. That man is wearing sneakers. Another imposter. The drone slipped through a broken window on the second floor and entered the warehouse interior. The main floor was a vast open space filled with old machinery and stacked pallets. In the center, illuminated by harsh work lights, was a scene that made Kearns' blood boil. Marcus was tied to a chair, his face bruised and swollen. Standing around him were Silas and Damon Rhodes, deep in conversation. And standing guard was the imposter driver, Victor, still wearing Marcus's clothes. Kearns watched the video feed, his jaw tight. Silas was gesturing animatedly, clearly pleased with himself. Rhodes was smiling, a predator savoring victory. They thought they'd won. "Can you get me inside?" Angela asked quietly. "You're staying in the van," Kearns replied firmly. "But what if there are more fake people inside? What if you can't tell?" Kearns considered this. She was right, again. He could fight his way through the exterior guards, but once inside, he'd be vulnerable to anyone who looked like his own men. He pulled out a wireless earpiece and a small camera he could clip to his collar. "You watch the feed from here. If you see anyone who looks wrong, posture, clothes, anything, you tell me immediately, but you do not leave this van." "Do you understand?" Angela nodded and put in the earpiece. Kearns checked his weapons one last time, then exited the van. The docks were silent except for the lap of water against pylons and the distant cry of gulls. He moved through the shadows like smoke, approaching the warehouse from the blind spot between two shipping containers. The first two guards went down silently, a knife to the throat for one, a chokehold for the other. Kearns dragged their bodies into the shadows and continued forward. "There's a guard at the side door," Angela's voice crackled in his earpiece. "He just lit a cigarette. He's looking the other way." Kearns reached the side door and slipped inside. The interior of the warehouse was a cathedral of rust and shadows. Kearns moved through the darkness between the machinery, his footsteps silent on the concrete floor. He could hear voices ahead, Silas' smooth, cultured tone and Rhodes' rougher growl. "The old man's finished," Silas was saying. "By now, Victor's disposed of the body. The security team thinks there's chaos. We move in tomorrow, consolidate power, and this entire operation becomes ours." "And the girl?" Rhodes asked. "Collateral damage. She's nobody." Kearns felt white-hot rage burn through him. They were talking about Angela like she was disposable. He moved closer, using the camera on his collar to give Angela a view of the scene. "Tell me what you see," he whispered into his mic. Angela's voice came through the earpiece, steady and focused. "Mr. Silas looks normal. The big man next to him must be Mr. Rhodes. I don't know him. But there are 4 guards around them. The one on the left near the blue barrel. His boots are too clean. Real guards have dirty boots. And the one on the right near the forklift is standing wrong. His hand is on his gun weird, like he's not used to carrying it there. 2 more imposters." That meant half the guards in the room were Rhodes' men disguised as Kearns' security. "The man in Mr. Marcus's clothes is standing behind the chair," Angela continued. "He keeps looking at the door like he's worried." "Good. Victor should be worried." Kearns took a deep breath and stepped out of the shadows, his pistol raised. "Silas." The room erupted into chaos. Every gun in the warehouse snapped toward Kearns. But Kearns had the advantage. He knew exactly who to shoot first. His first shot took out the imposter near the blue barrel. His second hit the fake guard by the forklift. Both men dropped before they could even draw their weapons. Silas's face went white with shock. "Impossible! You were in the car!" "A silver watch," Kearns said, his voice cold and steady. A left-handed wave. "You missed the little things, Silas." Silas drew his weapon, but Kearns was faster. His shot caught Silas in the shoulder, spinning him around. The remaining guards opened fire, but Kearns was already moving. Using the machinery as cover, Victor, the imposter driver, tried to use Marcus as a shield. But Marcus, battered as he was, threw his weight to the side, tipping the chair and giving Kearns a clear shot. Kearns took it, a single round that hit Victor in the chest. Rhodes was scrambling for cover, firing wildly. His shots pinged off metal and concrete, nowhere close to Kearns. Then came the sound Kearns had been waiting for: sirens. Multiple vehicles screeching to a halt outside the warehouse. Morrison had arrived. "State police, drop your weapons." Rhodes made one last desperate move, trying to execute Marcus to eliminate the witness. But Kearns was already there, his knife flashing in the work lights. Rhodes went down hard, clutching his arm, his gun clattering across the floor. Within minutes, the warehouse was secure. Morrison's team flooded in, professional and efficient. They zip-tied Rhodes and his surviving men, read them their rights, and began securing the scene. Kearns cut Marcus free from the chair. His driver's face was a mess of bruises, but he was alive. "Boss," Marcus rasped. "I'm sorry, they grabbed me outside my apartment. I tried to—" "You did fine," Kearns interrupted. "Rest." Morrison approached, his weathered face unreadable. "This is going to require a hell of a lot of paperwork, Kearns." "Silas orchestrated a coup," Kearns replied calmly. "He conspired with Rhodes to assassinate me and take over my operations. You have multiple witnesses, physical evidence, and a confession if you squeeze Silas hard enough. The rest of it, the legitimate business, stays clean." Morrison nodded slowly. It was the bargain they'd always had. "And the girl I heard about on the wire? She's a witness. She'll need protection. I'll arrange it." As the police led Silas and Rhodes away in cuffs, Kearns walked back to the utility van. Angela was still sitting in the driver's seat, the laptop in front of her, her yellow windbreaker bright against the gray interior. "You did good," Kearns said. Angela looked up at him. "Is Mr. Marcus okay?" "He will be." 3 days later, Christopher Kearns stood in the service corridor of the Obsidian Tower, watching Elena and Angela pack up their cleaning cart. The crisis was over. Silas and Rhodes were in custody, facing federal charges that would keep them locked up for decades. The imposter guards had been identified and removed. Marcus was recovering in a private medical facility. Order had been restored, but something had changed in Kearns. He couldn't stop thinking about how close he'd come to death, and how the entire criminal empire he'd built had been saved by an 8-year-old girl who paid attention to details that trained killers had missed. He approached Angela, who was helping her mother organize supplies. Elena looked up nervously, recognizing him. "Mr. Kearns," she stammered. "I'm so sorry about Angela running into the garage that day. She didn't mean to cause any trouble." "She saved my life," Kearns interrupted quietly. He knelt down so he was at eye level with Angela. "You have the best eyes in the city, Angela. You saw the truth because you looked at the man, not the uniform." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. Inside was a simple children's watch with a bright yellow strap. He clipped it onto Angela's wrist. "This is so you always know what time it is," he said. "But more importantly, it's a reminder. The small things matter, the details that other people miss. Those are the things that change everything." Angela looked down at the watch, her eyes wide. "There's one more thing," Kearns continued. He looked up at Elena. "You and your daughter are under my protection now. No one in this city touches the girl in yellow. No one threatens her, intimidates her, or harms her in any way. She looks out for me, and I look out for her. That's the deal." Elena's eyes filled with tears. "Mr. Kearns, we don't need—" "Yes, you do," Kearns said firmly, but not unkindly. "The people who tried to kill me know Angela was there. They know she's a witness. This isn't charity, it's survival. For all of us." He stood up and handed Elena a business card with a single phone number on it. "You call that number if anyone, and I mean anyone, gives you trouble, day or night." As Kearns walked away, Angela called out to him. "Mr. Kearns?" He turned back. "Will Mr. Marcus be okay?" "He'll be back at work next week," Kearns replied, "and he'll have a lollipop waiting for you." For the first time in days, Angela smiled. Christopher Kearns returned to his office at the top of the Obsidian Tower, looking out over the city he controlled. His empire was built on fear, on calculated violence, on the systematic elimination of threats. But now it was also built on something else, the watchful, unerring intuition of a little girl in a yellow jacket, who noticed that the silver watch was missing, that the wave came from the wrong hand, and that the smallest, most genuine details were the ones that mattered most. In a world of deception and betrayal, Angela Jones had reminded him of a fundamental truth. The people who see you really see you, are the ones worth protecting. And so the most dangerous man in the city became the guardian of the sharpest eyes on the street. The silver watch, the left-handed wave, the messy hair, and the lollipop wrapper. These weren't just details, they were the invisible threads that held the world together. And Angela Jones had taught Christopher Kearns how to see them. Before you go, I want to ask you something. If this story moved you, if it made you think about how we overlook the small details in our own lives, then please subscribe to this channel. Subscribing is free, and it helps more than you know. It tells the algorithm that stories like this, stories about loyalty, attention, and the small moments that change everything matter. Only those who truly appreciate the craft of storytelling will take that 1 second to click the button. Are you one of them? Subscribe now, and let's keep exploring these incredible stories together. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one.